This is round 6 from the 2014 World Rapid Championship. Carlsen has Black versus Sergei Karyakin. Karyakin opens with e4, and I believe this is probably the most exciting game that Carlsen played. Of the 15 games, I think this is certainly up there with being very, very interesting. And so what makes it so interesting? Well, probably the opening, for one. Not just the Sicilian, but the Sicilian Dragon. All right, so let's see what both players have cooked up. You better pack a strong punch with each of your moves if you're going to play this opening. And what do we have? Opposite sides castling. H-pawn. Trying to get further here to H5 to break open the king position. Both players would really like to have open files towards the enemy king. Knight e5, the bishop has to drop back, rook c8, bishop g5, looking to remove the knight and maybe drop the knight into d5, some lines, or remove the knight and follow up with g4, h5 stuff. Rook c5, king gets off of that half-open file, rook to e8, bishop h6, and now a5. This is looking at moves such as rook takes knight, followed by a5, or maybe in some lines just an immediate a5 to interfere with the bishop and knight's position. a4 stops this pawn cold, queen b6, and now g4. As soon as this move is played, f3 is soft. Needs support from a piece. This allows a very thematic sacrifice. Rook takes c3. Pawn takes rook, knight takes f3, knight takes knight, black is down a full rook. But we're not done with this combination yet. Knight takes e4, hitting the queen, queen d3, knight takes c3 check with the fork. That's a very important idea to be aware of. This knight on e5, the rook having pressure here, this bishop, as indirect as it may be, is hitting at that c3 square. g4, when it is played, f3 is there. It's vulnerable. We have this shot in the air. Knight takes f3, removing the defender of e4. Knight takes e4, knight takes c3 with check, king to c1, and now at the end of it, bishop takes bishop with check. Knight g5, however, blocks the check and throws a punch right back at black. f7 is hit. How do you deal with that? Bishop g7, defending the knight. This bishop can crash down on f7. If bishop takes f7, king h8, queen g6, what are you going to do now? Well, the best that black can do is go for a perpetual, since mate in 1 is looming on h7. Queen e3 would be the trick. That would be the idea. If the rook blocks, the knight is there to be giving these perpetual checks like so. If the king goes in this direction, you could be giving check like this, or like this. This bishop is still there to be controlling these dark squares. This will end as a perpetual check. We don't quite get to that point, however. We don't have bishop takes f7 here, but instead, rook on e, or rook on d to f1. A third piece is now hitting at f7. This is now allowing bishop takes g4, a move that was not played in the game, but a very difficult one to calculate. I mean, we're working with what, just 5 minutes? It's a 15-minute time control, 10-second increment. Very easy to want to just shut down this diagonal. d5 does just that. I believe that's the main intention. Make sure he's not going to go crazy on that f7 square. Now, there's some very interesting tactics that come about after bishop takes g4. What if rook takes f7? What do you do now? Knight e2 check. And if queen takes knight, what would you play here as black? If you'd like to, pause the video. See if you can figure it out. Okay. As you might have expected, bishop takes queen is maybe an obvious looking reply, but it loses in a very cute way. Black will not be happy after rook f8 double check, knight h7, game over. That would be a cool way to finish. We're not seeing that, though. The correct move in this position is not to take the queen, but to take the bishop. Let's first eliminate that mate and 2 threat. After pawn takes queen, now we take the queen, but we're not finished yet with this variation because there's another cute trick. One might think after rook to e1, white is now doing better. The bishop's hit, and when it moves, you're grabbing on e7. But the bishop doesn't have to move. Bishop f6, what a resource. If rook takes bishop, bishop takes knight with check, and then you pick up the rook. Black is completely winning. And if you take the rook here, well, you're recapturing, you're defending the bishop, you're also throwing a punch at the knight. Life is great for Team Black. But what a variation to have to be calculating these sorts of things in this limited time control. We did not see knight to e2. Instead, at this point right here, instead of bishop takes on g4, we had d5, cutting down the bishop's influence on f7. Rook takes f7, queen d4, pawn takes. The queens are now off the board, and, well, what do we have? White is up the exchange, but black has what for it? 1, 2, 3. It's still fairly balanced, right? 5 pawns versus 3. Very, very active position. Bishop pair is still there. Knight is quite deep in the white position. Rook f2, bishop d4. This was the computer's suggestion, b5. Looking to get this pawn rolling. That would have been interesting. Getting this guy up. He's just a few steps away. This rook could maybe start to cause the king a headache. Although this knight is also maybe a little bit of a pain to the black king, being in the black position here on g5. We didn't see that, though. It was not b5. Instead, bishop d4. Things start to become a lot more tame. Knight e4 is an interesting shot, allowing bishop takes on d5 with check. The knight is picked back up. The bishop has a very nice home. And the king now scoots over, trying to get to this nice home on d6. We do have that. This pawn is picked up. More trades. Bishop pair is still there. And this game soon enough boils down to, after all those crazy little potential tactics, this game ends up as a draw soon enough. We have the rook grabbing the bishop. 3 pawns versus the bishop. The king tracks that pawn down and comes over to make sure that these other 2 won't do anything exciting. And this finishes up just like that. No mating material, and with that, the game is drawn after 58 moves. So that's all for this video. Feel free to click the annotation link at the end of this video for round 7 of this tournament, or check in the video's description for links to the 14 other games.